we'll save all questions for the end, would we, for general discussion? Okay, so next up is Pat Risser. He's from Ohio. Pat Risser is a prominent psychiatric survivor and human rights advocate / activist. He serves on the National Advisory Council of the Center for Mental Health Services, Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. Recipients of Voice Award 2011 and Clifford Beers Award 2005. Board member and past president of NARPA, National Association for Rights Protection Advocacy. Despite having gone to law school, Pat overcame the label of low functioning and is proudly treatment resistant and non-compliant. Thank you, Pat.
Thank you. I'd ask for a volunteer, maybe Elyn. Let me know when I've got like 2 minutes. Let me know when I've got like 2 minutes left. I start out soft, but as I get more passionate, I tend to get louder. So if I get too loud, wave at me or holler or something. I'm a recovered mental patient. What that means is I don't take psychiatric drugs. I don't seek counseling. I don't have anything to do with the system as a recipient of their services. I'm very disenchanted with those services, and I try to help others find their way free of that system. For 10 years of my life, however, I was very deeply enmeshed as a mental patient. I took a daily cocktail of 2 antipsychotics, 2 antidepressants, and 3 medications allegedly for side effects. I've never heard a satisfactory explanation for why I needed at least 2 of everything, why 1 wouldn't do the job, but that was part of the problem that I had. I used to walk down the streets of Denver, down the middle of Colorado Boulevard, at 3 o'clock in the morning, screaming at my mother to get out of my head. I got out of State Hospital and I walked into a biker bar and said, I just got out of the hospital for trying to kill myself. Anybody here want to complete the job? I was hospitalized over 20 times, mostly following a suicide attempt. Interestingly, most of my suicide attempts were by the tool that the psychiatrist put in my hands. Got a bottle of pills, hey? Take them all at once, maybe it'll work. For those hospitalizations, I don't think they ever helped. I don't think the medications ever helped. I fought against it. In fact, after 10 years, I started having heart problems. I believe they were directly caused by over 10 years of taking the medications. I went into State Hospital and I was extremely depressed and suicidal. And I thought, okay, the surest way to die in this hellhole will be I'll stop taking all my medications, including the heart medicine. And if I stop taking the heart medicine, maybe I'll die. All right, yeah, I had a plan. So I became treatment resistant and non-compliant. And I recovered and I got better. Because the primary side effect of Inderall, according to the PDR, is major depression. And that's what I was taking, a beta blocker for my heart. So when I stopped taking the medicine and got treatment resistant and non-compliant, I got better. So I started really looking into some of the medications and figuring out, there's something strange going on here. So, but first I had to overcome being a mental patient. And I haven't heard a whole lot of talk here, and I don't know everybody in this audience. So I'm going to start a little bit with Mental Patient 101. What I did was I went to the mental health system and I said, help me, I'm broken, fix me. And having gone to medical school, the psychiatrist, having had God 101 and 102 in medical school. They said, okay, you're giving us all your power, we'll take it. Great. And so I grew up, like most people, from infancy. You have a problem. Trust doctor, see doctor. Doctor will fix it. So doctors were automatically elevated to the pedestal. And so when I didn't get better, I couldn't blame them. They're the experts. It must be me. I must not be doing something right. I need more drugs. I need to journal more. I need more therapy. I need I must not be trying hard enough. And I tried harder and harder. And the harder I tried, without success, the more I blamed myself. And the more I self-blamed, the more I slipped into this mental patient identity. As I grew discouraged and hopeless and helpless, I got so bad that if my wife or kids needed something and I had therapy scheduled, you know which one took priority in my life? And that's really sad. It's really kind of tragic. I went to therapy because I wanted so bad to be well. My identity, my primary identity in life became mental patient. I lived by my diagnosis. My life revolved around therapy. My life revolved around the drugs. My life centered around my issues and my problems. Therein lies the clue to recovery. What I lost was myself, my self-esteem, my self-worth, my self-value. All of this sense of self was gone as I became more and more mental patient. Like so many I see today, I shuffled from place to place, measuring time from cigarette to cigarette, or from big gulp to big gulp. I recovered myself. That does not mean I got over whatever my issues were. I would get suicidal. I'd tell a mental health professional. They'd get panicked and lock me up. Now I get suicidal. I don't go telling any mental health professionals, and I don't get locked up anymore. But I still get suicidal regularly. There are times when it's daily. I used to drive from Portland, Oregon to the coast, and coming down out of that coastal range, there was this beautiful curve coming down out of the mountains, and if I would just go straight, right over the cliff, and it would all be over. And every time my hands would turn the wheel and make that curve. I've learned to cope with my feelings. I've learned that feeling suicidal is a feeling. And I can ride it out and it will pass. It doesn't have the strength to compel me and drive me like it once did. But it was a long, hard, difficult road to travel. But I got there without medications. Recovery. I've talked to vets who've come back from war. They went over with 2 legs and came back with 1. And after spending a little time with them, I could leave the room and say, this one's recovered and this one isn't. Do you have some sense of what that might mean? It has to do with attitude. It doesn't mean that either of them ever got their leg back. In college, I tutored blind students. I had one who said, I was supposed to teach people how to graph a curve. And the one said, how can I do that? I can't see. I'm blind. What's wrong with you? The other said, hey, let's get one of those pegboards like they had in school, and you put the pegs in, and I'll be able to feel and see the curve. I contend one was recovered, one was not, even though neither of them had their sight restored. I contend that the medications are an impediment very often, that there are ways for everybody to recover. Now, I don't know what those ways are. My path is not going to be anybody else's path. And I don't begrudge people who make an informed choice. I do have a problem with it on a personal level because I think we're dying over 25 years younger than the general population. I believe in part because of the medications. But, and I hear statistics, this drug kills, 1 in 10,000. But if 1 in 10,000 is okay, how many are an acceptable loss? Is it 1 in 5,000, 1 in 1,000, 1 in 100? But what if that one is you? Or that one is a loved one? Or that one might be an Elyn and the world would be deprived of her brilliance? On a personal level, it seems almost like self-harm. Informed consent is problematic. If I give an informed consent to take a medication today, that doesn't mean that I consent tomorrow. I should be able to change my mind, to disagree with the doctor. And in fact, the reason why it has to change tomorrow and the next day is because taking a pill today, there's a very good chance that it probably won't do you a whole lot of harm. But it approaches an almost absolute certainty that if you continue that medication for 20 years or more, it's an almost absolute certainty that it will cause serious bodily harm. So consent has to change as a function of time because the risks of the medications go up with time. But I can't tell other people what to do. There's a lot of self-harming behaviors. People overeat, people smoke. We don't have police for follow your diet, and if you don't, we're going to have the food police outside of the McDonald's drive-thru. Or you leave the house and you forget your inhaler or smoke a cigarette and you've got asthma. We don't have the police waiting for you to pick you up and lock you up and force you. Oh, but if you don't take your medication, we might, because we have a force system for psychiatric medications. That, too, is problematic. See how absurd it sounds when we apply it to other areas of our life, like not following doctor's orders for a diet or asthma. Has anybody in the room ever gotten like a 10-day prescription for antibiotics and stopped at like day 7 and put the rest of them in the medicine cabinet? Come on, sure. People in general are not very compliant. We're ornery critters. And we just don't like to comply with much of anything. Compliance is really a myth. I'm not going to be one of your brilliant researchers. I'm not going to be one of the doctors here or the great legal scholars. But I do read. I'm not stupid. Okay, Courtney Harding did a longitudinal study. Courtney Harding went in and was checking people going back over 25 years to Vermont State Hospital, and they were comparing with New Hampshire hospitals at the time and doing this really serious study. Courtney was interviewing one woman in her home, and the woman finally said, Courtney, come here a minute. Took her into her bedroom and pulled out the bottom drawer of her dresser. And the bottom drawer was full of psychiatric medications. She said, I don't want the hassle of them, so I go in and I pick up my medications once a week. But she says, I haven't taken them in years. Courtney was like, oh, God. Now I'm going to have to redo all this research. And she went back and redid it meticulously. And what she found was that over 2/3 of those people who were recovered were no longer taking psychiatric medications. I'm not a great researcher, but I can't ignore the really great and brilliant researchers out there. And there's a lot more evidence of that sort of thing. Even 60 Minutes now is jumping on the bandwagon a couple of weeks ago, talking about the drugs not being any more effective than placebo. So I feel justified in questioning it. Like I said, I don't know what causes this disorder. I do have a clue in my case. 3 years old. Mom, overwhelmed, used to like to throw me down the stairs. The medical records said that at 3 years old, in a 6-month period of time, I had 13 brain concussions.
13 what?
Brain concussions. I've raised 3 kids and all their friends, and I don't know any of them ever had a brain concussion. My medical records say I had 13 in a 6-month period of time at 3 years old. Then my mother remarried, and my stepfather came into my life at 7. And I was elated and happy and said, gee, when you get married, can I call you Dad? And he was going to be my rescuer. And he turned out to be a pedophile. 7-year-old child. Hasn't got much sense about what's going on in the world around him. And it makes even less sense when things like that happen, when you're visited in the middle of the night. And being raped by my stepfather, those things I didn't have the equipment to deal with, so I repressed those memories. I could not articulate those things that had happened until many, many years later, when I verified them with witnesses and brothers and medical records and things. But the memories went away, and I started having flashbacks many, many years later as a mental patient. So now I'm very aware of the fact that 90% or more, the studies are consistently finding people who receive public mental health services, 90% or more, have survived severe abuse, neglect, or trauma somewhere in their past. I'm not saying that's everybody, but I will say that the medications stifle people's ability to get that out, to deal with it, to cope, to move on. And I think the medications kept me a mental patient for many years and prevented me being able to move on. When I dropped out of law school and was told by the dean when I tried to come back in after an episode of major depression that I could not return until I saw a psychiatrist. I saw the psychiatrist who referred me to vocational rehabilitation for an assessment. That assessment consisted of standing in a sheltered workshop next to people who were severely mentally retarded, counting 10 fishhooks into a little plastic bag and stapling on a label all day long. I had been student body president in college. I'd gone to law school. And if I was not depressed going into the sheltered workshop, I certainly was in short order. I never made it back to law school. But I became an advocate up in Contra Costa County, and I represented people in civil commitment hearings and forced medication capacity and competence hearings. And it was amazingly frustrating that when I would win a hearing for somebody on competence capacity, the doctor would immediately discharge the person. It's frustrating because I feel like medical school and all of the learning and all of the education and the years and years of training should have given doctors more in their toolbox than a prescription pad for how to help a human being, how to connect. I've been helping people since the 60s when I volunteered at a free clinic. I've helped a lot of people with an altered state of consciousness, and I still help people. Only now I help them, and their altered state of consciousness is called mental illness. I don't see a whole lot of difference. I've never had a prescription pad, and I've helped hundreds, maybe thousands of people find their way through whatever it is they're experiencing. I think that there are more there's more and more research coming out about alternatives to the medication. These alternatives, none of them that I'm aware of, carry the risk. And so, Soteria House, open dialogue, those kinds of things don't have anywhere near the risks and have at least as good a benefit. I think I'm running out of time, and I didn't bring a real slideshow, but I did bring a couple of things just to help make my point. So, thank you, and I can't wait for questions.